Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that might completely change how you think about staying mobile and independent as you get older, especially if you're over 75 or caring for someone who is. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another boring health lecture, I need you to stick with me because what I'm about to share goes against everything you've probably been told your entire life about exercise and aging. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why some of the world's leading orthopedic surgeons are actually telling seniors to stop relying on walking as their primary form of exercise. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a really important reason why, and it has nothing to do with walking being bad for you. So let me start with a story that's going to sound familiar to a lot of you. A few months ago, I had a patient come into my office. Let's call her Margaret. Margaret was 78 years old, super sharp mentally, lived independently, did her own grocery shopping, the whole 9 yards. And she was so proud of the fact that she walked every single day. Rain or shine, Margaret was out there doing her 30-minute walk around the neighborhood. Her doctor had told her walking was the best exercise. Her friends all walked together, and she genuinely believed she was doing everything right to stay healthy and strong. But here's the thing, Margaret came to see me because she had fallen 3 times in the past 6 months. Not major falls, nothing that broke bones, but falls that really shook her confidence. And when I examined her and put her through some basic movement tests, I discovered something that honestly breaks my heart every time I see it in patients. Margaret could walk just fine on flat ground, but the moment I asked her to step up onto a small platform about the height of a curb, she struggled significantly. When I had her try to stand up from a chair without using her hands, she couldn't do it. And when we tested her balance by having her stand on one leg, she could barely manage 3 seconds. Now you might be wondering, how is this possible? How can someone who walks every single day for 30 minutes struggle with these basic movements? And this is where things get really interesting, and why I need you to pay close attention because this applies to so many people. Walking is what we call a steady state, repetitive motion exercise. It's fantastic for cardiovascular health, it's great for mood, it absolutely has its place in a healthy lifestyle. But, and this is a huge but, walking alone doesn't challenge your muscles in the ways that actually prevent falls and maintain independence. Think about it this way. When you walk, you're essentially doing the same movement pattern over and over again. You're moving forward on relatively flat ground at a consistent pace, using the same muscles in the same way. With every step, your brain gets really efficient at this one particular movement pattern, which is great for walking. But life doesn't just require walking, does it? Real life requires you to step up onto curbs. It requires you to stand up from a low couch or a toilet seat. It requires you to catch yourself if you trip. It requires you to carry groceries while opening a door. It requires you to reach up into a high cabinet and then stabilize yourself as you bring something down. It requires you to move laterally, to twist, to change directions quickly. And here's the kicker. None of those movements are trained by walking alone. So what happens is you get really good at walking, but all these other crucial movement patterns, the ones that actually keep you independent and prevent falls, they start to deteriorate because they're not being challenged. The muscle strength declines, the neural pathways that control those movements get weaker, and your balance systems don't get the varied input they need to stay sharp. Let me give you some numbers that really drive this home, and I promise these statistics are going to make you sit up and pay attention. Every single year, 1 in 4 adults over the age of 65 will experience a fall. That's 25%. But here's what most people don't know. For adults over 75, that number jumps even higher, and the consequences become much more serious. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related deaths in older adults. They're the most common cause of traumatic brain injuries in this age group, and perhaps most significantly, after a serious fall, about half of older adults never regain their previous level of mobility and independence. Think about that for a second. One fall, and your entire life can change. You go from living independently to needing assistance, from being active and engaged to being fearful and homebound. And the tragedy is that so many of these falls are completely preventable if we just trained our bodies in the right way. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, okay, but my doctor told me walking was enough, or I've been walking my whole life and I'm fine. And look, I'm not here to say your doctor is wrong or that walking is bad. Walking is genuinely wonderful for many aspects of health. But what the research is increasingly showing us, and what orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists are seeing in their practices every single day, is that walking alone is not sufficient to maintain the strength, balance, and functional capacity needed to prevent falls and maintain independence in your mid-70s and beyond. The human body is incredibly adaptable, but it's also very specific in how it adapts. We have this principle in exercise science called SAID, which stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. Basically, your body gets good at whatever you ask it to do repeatedly. If you only walk, you get good at walking, but you don't get good at all the other movements that life demands from you. So what's the solution? What should seniors over 75 be doing instead of just walking? Well, and this is where things get really practical and actionable. The answer is something called functional strength training combined with balance work. And before you tune out thinking this means you need to join a gym or lift heavy weights or do something complicated, please stay with me because what I'm about to describe is so much simpler and more accessible than you might think. Functional strength training just means exercises that mimic the real-life movements you need to do every day. We're talking about things like sitting down and standing up from a chair, stepping up and down from a step or platform, reaching in different directions while maintaining your balance, carrying objects while walking, standing on one leg. These are the movements that actually translate to maintaining your independence and preventing falls. And here's something really encouraging that I want you to know. The research on this is incredibly clear. Study after study has shown that older adults, even those in their 80s and 90s, can make significant improvements in strength, balance, and functional capacity with the right kind of training. We're not talking about becoming a bodybuilder or an athlete. We're talking about being able to get up from a chair without help, being able to carry your groceries without feeling unstable, being able to catch yourself if you start to stumble. These are the things that determine whether you can live independently or whether you need assistance with daily activities. And the good news is that you can develop these abilities at any age with consistent practice. Let me walk you through some specific examples, and I want you to really visualize these because understanding the why behind each movement is going to help you appreciate how different this is from just walking. First, let's talk about the sit to stand exercise. This is literally just practicing standing up from a chair and sitting back down, but doing it in a controlled, intentional way. Now, you might think this sounds too simple to matter, but I cannot overstate how important this movement is. Think about how many times a day you need to stand up from sitting. You get out of bed in the morning, you sit down for breakfast, and then stand up to clear your dishes. You sit on the toilet and need to stand up. You sit down to rest and need to stand back up. If you lose the ability to do this independently, you lose your independence, period. But here's what happens to most people who only walk for exercise. The muscles required for standing up, primarily your quadriceps in the front of your thighs and your glutes and your backside, they don't get challenged enough by walking alone. Walking uses these muscles, sure, but not through their full range of motion and not with the same kind of strength demand that standing up from a seated position requires. So when you practice sit-to-stand exercises, you're specifically training the exact movement pattern and the exact muscles you need for this crucial daily activity. And you can make it progressive too. If you're starting out and it's difficult, you can use a higher chair or use your hands for assistance. As you get stronger, you can use a lower chair, cross your arms over your chest, or even hold a weight. The beauty of functional training is that it's infinitely scalable to your current ability level. Another critical exercise is step-ups. This is where you practice stepping up onto a platform or step and then stepping back down. Again, this might sound simple, but think about how different this is from walking. When you step up, you're lifting your entire body weight with one leg, which requires significantly more strength than walking does. You're also challenging your balance because there's a moment where all your weight is on one leg and you're in an unstable position. Plus, you're training the neural coordination required to judge distance, place your foot correctly, and execute the movement smoothly. In real life, this translates to being able to navigate curbs, stairs, getting in and out of cars, stepping into a bathtub. These are all movements that become incredibly dangerous if you're not strong and stable enough to do them confidently. I've had patients tell me they stopped going to certain places because there were a few steps to get in, or they stopped visiting friends who lived in houses with stairs. Imagine how much that limits your life. But with regular practice of step-ups, you maintain the capacity to handle these situations. Now let's talk about balance training, which is probably the most underappreciated aspect of fall prevention. Your balance system is actually quite complex. It involves input from your inner ear, your vision, and something called proprioception, which is your body's sense of where it is in space. All three of these systems need to work together to keep you stable, and like any system, if you don't challenge it regularly, it deteriorates. Walking on flat ground and good lighting doesn't really challenge your balance system much, but standing on one leg, that's a completely different story. When you stand on one leg, you're forcing all three balance systems to work overtime. You're eliminating the wide base of support you normally have with 2 feet, so your body has to make constant tiny adjustments to keep you upright. This trains the neural pathways involved in balance and strengthens all the small stabilizer muscles in your ankles, knees, and hips. And the real-world application is huge. Every time you take a step, there's a moment where you're on one leg. If you trip or stumble, you need to be able to catch yourself on one leg. If you're reaching for something, you might shift your weight onto one leg. If you step on an uneven surface, you need single leg stability to recover. I had another patient, let's call him Robert, who is 81 years old. Robert came to me after he had a minor fall while reaching for something on a high shelf. He hadn't hurt himself badly, but it scared him. When I tested his balance, he couldn't stand on one leg for even 1 second. We worked together on a simple program that included balance exercises, and within 3 months, he could stand on one leg for 20 seconds. But more importantly, he told me he felt confident again. He wasn't afraid of falling anymore because he could feel that his body was more stable and responsive. Here's another thing that's really important to understand. As we age, we naturally lose muscle mass in a process called sarcopenia. This typically starts around age 30, but it accelerates significantly after age 70. If you're not actively working to maintain muscle mass through strength training, you can lose as much as 3 to 5% of your muscle mass per decade after age 30 and even more after 70. Now, walking does help maintain muscle to some degree, but it's not enough to prevent sarcopenia because walking doesn't provide sufficient resistance to stimulate muscle growth and maintenance. This is why strength training becomes so crucial as we age. When you do exercises that challenge your muscles, like standing up from a chair without hands, doing step-ups, or even holding light weights while doing certain movements, you're sending a signal to your body that says, hey, I need these muscles, keep them strong. Without that signal, your body will let those muscles waste away because maintaining muscle is metabolically expensive and your body is efficient. Now I want to address something that I know some of you are thinking. You might be worried that strength training or these exercises sound dangerous or that you might hurt yourself. This is a completely understandable concern, and it's actually one of the reasons why so many older adults stick with just walking because it feels safe and familiar. But here's what I need you to understand. Yes, there is some risk with any physical activity, but the risk of not doing these exercises is far greater than the risk of doing them properly. The risk of falling because you're weak and unstable is much higher than the risk of getting injured doing controlled strength and balance exercises. And the key word there is controlled. I'm not suggesting anyone go out and start doing crazy exercises without guidance. In fact, ideally, you would work with a physical therapist or a qualified trainer who has experience working with older adults to learn proper form and progress safely. But even if you don't have access to a professional, these basic functional movements can be done safely at home with some common sense precautions. Make sure you have something stable to hold on to if needed. Start with easier variations and progress gradually. Listen to your body and don't push through sharp pain. The exercises themselves, when done correctly, are actually quite safe because they're based on movements your body is designed to do. Let me give you a really practical framework that you can start implementing right away. I'm going to outline what a simple functional training routine might look like, and I want you to notice how different this is from just going for a walk. You would start with a warm-up, maybe 5 minutes of walking in place or around your home, some gentle arm circles, some ankle circles, just to get your blood flowing. Then you would move into your functional exercises. You might do 2 sets of 10 sit to stands from a chair. Remember, this is practicing standing up and sitting down with control. If you need to use your hands at first, that's totally fine. The goal is progressive improvement. Next, you might do 2 sets of 8 step-ups on each leg. This could be on a single stair or even just a low, sturdy platform. Hold on to a railing for support if needed. The important thing is that you're practicing the movement and challenging those muscles. Then you would do some balance work. Maybe practice standing on one leg for as long as you can, working up to 30 seconds on each side. You could do this while holding onto a counter or chair back for safety. You might also practice walking heel to toe in a straight line, which challenges your balance in a different way. You could add in some lateral movements like side steps, because we rarely move sideways in daily life, but it's an important movement pattern for stability. Maybe do some reaching exercises where you reach up, reach down, reach to the sides, all while maintaining your balance. And then you'd finish with some gentle stretching, focusing on your hips, legs, and back. This entire routine might take 20 to 30 minutes, about the same time as a walk, but the benefits for fall prevention and functional capacity are exponentially greater. And here's the really exciting part. You don't have to choose between this kind of training and walking. In fact, the ideal scenario is that you do both. Maybe you do your functional strength and balance routine 3 times per week, and you still go for walks on the other days, or even on the same days if you have the energy. Walking is still valuable for cardiovascular health, mood, social interaction if you walk with friends, and general activity. But it needs to be part of a more comprehensive approach, not the only thing you're doing. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough but is absolutely critical, and that's the mental and emotional component of fall prevention. I've seen this over and over in my practice. Someone has a fall, even a minor one, and it creates this fear that fundamentally changes their behavior. They start moving less because they're afraid of falling again. They avoid certain activities. They become more sedentary. And this creates a vicious cycle because the less you move, the weaker and more unstable you become, which actually increases your fall risk even more. This fear of falling has a name in the medical literature. It's called post-fall syndrome, and it's a serious problem. Studies have shown that fear of falling is associated with reduced quality of life, decreased social participation, increased dependence on others, and even increased risk of depression. So preventing falls isn't just about preventing physical injury. It's about maintaining confidence, independence, dignity, and quality of life. And this is another reason why functional training is so valuable. When you practice these movements regularly and feel yourself getting stronger and more stable, it builds confidence. You start to trust your body again. You feel capable. And that mental shift is just as important as the physical improvements. I've had patients tell me that doing their exercises made them feel empowered, that it gave them a sense of control over their health and their future. That's incredibly valuable, especially at a stage in life when it's easy to feel like things are just declining and there's nothing you can do about it. The truth is, there's a lot you can do. Your body is remarkably adaptable at any age. Yes, there are natural changes that come with aging, and we can't stop the clock, but the rate at which we lose function, the quality of life we maintain, the independence we preserve, those things are largely within our control based on the choices we make about how we move our bodies. Before we wrap up, I want to give you some specific action steps because information is only valuable if you actually do something with it. First, if you're over 75 or caring for someone who is, I want you to honestly assess your current functional capacity. Can you stand up from a chair without using your hands? Can you step up onto a curb or stair confidently? Can you stand on one leg for at least 10 seconds? If the answer to any of these is no, that's okay, but it's a sign that you need to start working on these movements. Second, consider scheduling an appointment with a physical therapist who specializes in geriatrics or fall prevention. They can assess your specific situation, identify your particular risk factors, and create a personalized program for you. Many people don't realize that physical therapy isn't just for after you're injured. It's actually incredibly valuable for prevention. Third, start incorporating functional exercises into your routine, even if you start small. Maybe you just commit to doing sit-to-stands during commercial breaks while watching TV. Maybe you practice standing on one leg while brushing your teeth. Maybe you do step-ups on your front step before you go for your walk. Small, consistent actions add up to significant improvements over time. Fourth, make your home environment safer. Remove tripping hazards like loose rugs. Improve lighting, especially in hallways and stairs. Install grab bars in the bathroom. Make sure you have sturdy handrails on any stairs. These environmental modifications work hand in hand with improving your physical capacity to reduce fall risk. And fifth, talk to your doctor about your medications, because some medications can affect balance or cause dizziness, and sometimes adjustments can be made to reduce fall risk. Also, get your vision checked regularly, because poor vision is a significant fall risk factor. I know this has been a lot of information, but I hope you can see why this message is so important and why orthopedic surgeons are increasingly telling seniors that walking alone is not enough. We're not trying to take away something you enjoy or tell you that what you've been doing is wrong. We're trying to give you additional tools to stay independent, confident, and active for as long as possible. The goal isn't just to add years to your life. It's to add life to your years, to maintain the capacity to do the things you love, to visit with family and friends, to pursue your hobbies, to live on your own terms. And that requires a body that's not just good at walking, but good at all the varied movements that real life demands. Every patient I've worked with who has embraced this approach, who has added functional strength and balance training to their routine, has told me it made a profound difference in their life. They feel stronger, more stable, more confident, more independent. And isn't that what we all want as we age? To maintain our dignity, our autonomy, our ability to live fully. So if you take nothing else away from this video, please take this. Walking is wonderful. Keep doing it, but add in functional strength and balance training at least 3 times per week. Focus on movements that mimic real-life activities. Challenge your body in varied ways, and watch as your capacity improves, your confidence grows, and your fall risk decreases. Your future self will thank you for taking action today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this valuable, please share it with anyone you know who might benefit from this information. And let me know in the comments if you have questions or if you want me to create a follow-up video demonstrating specific exercises. Take care of yourselves, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.